I caught her red-handed. 14 brutal hours at the power plant, and I roll up to find Delilah Thornwick, this entitled real estate agent with a god complex literally breaking into my house. Metal scraping against oak, her truck route. "Code violations give me emergency access rights," she announces. Dead serious. The sheer audacity hit me like a freight train. When I demanded answers, this lunatic whipped out her phone, dialed 911, and started shrieking about a dangerous man attacking a community official. She breaks into my house, then calls the cops. On me. But when my wife stepped outside, those responding officers froze solid. One actually dropped his radio, staring like he'd seen a ghost. What would you do if someone broke into your house, then had you arrested? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I guarantee half of you have HOA nightmares that'll make your blood boil. Let me tell you how this nightmare started. My name's Bryce Kellerman, 47, electrical systems supervisor at the regional power plant. My wife Cassandra just retired after 23 years as police chief of Millfield Township. We thought we'd found paradise in Pinewood Estates, 160 homes of honest families just trying to live the American dream. The smell of sawdust and paint primer filled our 3-bedroom ranch as we renovated room by room. Steel-toed boots crunching on gravel after long shifts. Rough cedar fence boards under my hands as we built our property line ourselves. Every evening, Cassandra and I would sit on our deck, planning the next project, feeling like we'd finally made it. Then Hurricane Delilah hit. Delilah Thornwick, 52, HOA president for 6 years, real estate agent with 3 rental properties in our development. Picture a woman who wields a designer clipboard like Thor's hammer and drives a white Mercedes SUV like she's leading a military convoy. Her husband Clayton sits on city council, our first red flag that we completely missed. 3 weeks after moving in, the extortion began. A $150 fine for unauthorized exterior modification. Our heinous crime? Replacing builder-grade beige shutters with forest green ones. I pulled out the HOA handbook, both colors explicitly approved. When I called to dispute, Delilah's voice oozed fake politeness. The board has discretionary authority over aesthetic decisions. Translation, I do what I want. The hits kept coming. $200 for excessive noise during Cassandra's 50th birthday party. We shut down at 9:47 p.m. on Saturday. I actually checked my watch. $125 for planting native wildflowers instead of water-hogging Kentucky bluegrass. $175 for parking my work truck overnight, despite the handbook clearly allowing vehicles under 8,000 pounds. Mine weighs 7,200. But here's what really fried my circuits. We weren't alone. Elderly veteran Frank Kowalski got nailed for a patriotic display violation because his American flag was supposedly too large. Single mother Jennifer Valdez faced fines for her kids drawing chalk art on their own driveway. Chalk, that disappears with rain. $800 in manufactured violations. Every appeal required a $50 administrative fee for the privilege of pleading our case to Delilah and her 2 hand-picked cronies. Now, here's the thing about being an electrician for 20 years, you learn to trace every problem back to its source. So I spent my weekends at the county courthouse, breathing in that musty smell of aging file folders, digging through property records and corporate documents. What I found was beautiful in its simplicity. 12 families had fled the neighborhood in 18 months, selling for an average of $23,000 below market value due to HOA lien clouds on their titles. Delilah's real estate company represented buyers in 8 of those sales. She wasn't just power hungry. She was running a protection racket with a clipboard. Then I hit the jackpot. Always verify an organization's legal standing before paying any fines. Expired incorporation means 0 legal authority to collect. Our HOA's incorporation had expired 14 months ago and was never renewed. Delilah had been stealing money with no more legal authority than a kid running a lemonade stand. The harassment escalated fast. Anonymous 3 a.m. calls with heavy breathing, dog waste decorating our porch, my work truck's tires slashed at the plant. The nightly sound of Delilah's Mercedes idling outside became our twisted lullaby, engine purring like a stalking predator. Security cameras caught her prowling our property with flashlight and measuring tape during my night shifts, hunting for fresh violations to invent. Cassandra kept pushing for the peaceful route. Maybe we should just pay and move on, she'd whisper during our strategy sessions. But I didn't spend 2 decades keeping the lights on for half the state to get rolled by a suburban crime boss with a real estate license. That's when my wife's cop instincts finally surfaced. 23 years taught me to spot criminals, she said, reviewing the footage. This woman isn't breaking HOA rules, she's running organized crime. Decision time: flee like 12 other families or stand our ground. We planted our flag. The war officially started when I installed security cameras. Nothing fancy, basic surveillance pointing at our own property after someone decided our backyard made a great midnight stroll. The crunch of footsteps on fallen leaves at 2 a.m. tends to wake up guys who work with enough electricity to power a small city. Delilah's counterattack was faster than my morning coffee. Certified letter, 48 hours later. Our cameras apparently violate privacy expectations of neighboring properties. Immediate removal demanded, plus a $300 fine for good measure. That chemical smell of certified letter adhesive hit me as I tore it open, and honestly, my first instinct was pure rage. But 20 years of troubleshooting electrical systems taught me something valuable. When equipment fails, you don't kick it. You diagnose the problem. Here's my mini twist. Instead of arguing with crazy, I went hunting for ammunition. Saturday morning found me at the county courthouse, diving into record books like a treasure hunter. 12 hours hunched over documents, pages yellow and brittle under my fingertips, breathing in that distinctive musty smell of aging bureaucracy. My back was screaming, but what I found made every minute worth it. Delilah's rental empire was falling apart. 17 active code violations across her 3 properties. Broken gutters, unpermitted electrical work that would make any inspector cringe, and a septic system literally poisoning someone's yard. But the real jackpot was hidden in the HOA's incorporation papers. Always verify an organization's legal standing before paying any fines. Expired incorporation means zero legal authority to collect. Our HOA had been legally dead for 14 months. Every single fine Delilah had collected since then was theft with a clipboard. Game changed. I started building my case like designing an electrical grid, systematic, documented, foolproof. Spreadsheets tracking every resident's violations and enforcement patterns. Photos time-stamped to the second. A paper trail so clean it could have passed a federal audit. Delilah didn't appreciate my newfound hobby. Emergency board meeting notice arrived next, citing my escalating defiance issues. Another certified letter threatened property liens. The woman was apparently valedictorian at the University of Suburban Intimidation. But here's the thing about threats: they need teeth to bite. And all of hers had been legally pulled. The psychological games escalated beautifully. Community members started treating us like we had the plague, offering apologetic shrugs when forced to acknowledge our existence. Mrs. Chen from the corner house managed to slip me a trembling note. She did same thing to us. We had to sell. Evenings became our twisted entertainment hour. Delilah's white Mercedes would materialize outside our house, engine idling for 30 minutes like some mechanical vulture. My security cameras captured her midnight property tours with flashlight and measuring tape, probably calculating which bushes she could declare illegally tall. The woman had elevated stalking to an art form. Cassandra was cracking under the pressure, suggesting we just pay up and move somewhere peaceful. I'd find her watching that Mercedes through our blinds, 23 years of law enforcement instincts battling her retirement dreams of quiet suburban bliss. But electrical work teaches you a fundamental truth. You don't fix short circuits by ignoring them. You find the source or watch everything burn down. Second courthouse expedition revealed the full scope of Delilah's operation. Every harassment victim followed an identical pattern: manufactured violations, escalating fines, lien threats, then miraculous appearance of Delilah's real estate company with a motivated buyer offering below-market prices. It was extortion with a realtor's license. Plot twist that shouldn't have surprised me: I wasn't fighting solo. 3 other families were quietly building their own evidence files. 2 had lawyers on speed dial. 1 elderly couple had already filed state complaints. We were a resistance movement that just needed to find each other. The revelation that broke everything open? Delilah's brother-in-law, Rick, had been playing official inspector despite having 0 credentials and a suspended contractor's license. Every structural violation he'd identified was legally meaningless fiction. That night, I transformed our kitchen table into a crime scene, spreading county records everywhere like evidence in a federal investigation. The texture of those documents under my hands felt important, because I was finally understanding they represented actual criminal activity. Cassandra found me at midnight, surrounded by papers like some obsessed detective. "This reminds me of organized crime cases I used to work," she said, studying property transfer records. "Same systematic approach, same predatory patterns." Her cop brain was connecting dots I'd missed. This wasn't random HOA tyranny. This was criminal enterprise wearing a suburban disguise. But as I organized my evidence mountain, one detail jumped out that made my electrician brain spark with recognition. Property sale timing coincided perfectly with city council zoning votes, changes that boosted values for Delilah's buyers while tanking them for harassment victims. Clayton wasn't just supporting his wife's hobby, he was an active business partner. That night, Delilah's Mercedes never appeared on our street. The silence felt more threatening than all her previous stalking combined, because quiet usually means someone's planning something big. Delilah's next assault came gift-wrapped in fake authority, which somehow made it more insulting than honest extortion. Tuesday morning, she materialized with her designer clipboard and a surprise guest star brother-in-law Rick, grandly introduced as the official HOA inspector. Picture a guy who looked like he'd been recruited from a cigarette-stained gas station, complete with a mustache that peaked somewhere around 1987 and never recovered. The aromatic blend of Rick's chain-smoking habit and Delilah's suffocating perfume created an olfactory assault that perfectly matched this bureaucratic theater performance. "We're conducting a comprehensive compliance assessment," Delilah announced with the gravitas of someone leading a federal investigation instead of a suburban shakedown. They measured our fence height to the quarter inch, photographed electrical outlets like CSY evidence. Rick actually got on hands and knees, inspecting the premium cedar boards I'd used for deck repair with the intensity of someone who'd finally found his life's calling. "Unapproved building materials," he declared triumphantly, despite these boards costing twice the standard rate. Here comes my mini twist. While they manufactured violations, I was manufacturing bulletproof evidence. My upgraded security system captured every second, including the Academy Award moment when Delilah coached Rick's performance. "Make sure you document those deck boards as non-compliant," she whispered, apparently unaware that criminal conspiracies work better without high-definition audio recording. The fabricated crisis arrived via certified mail 48 hours later. $500 fine for structural modifications without architectural review. My heinous crime? Repairing deck boards that prevented collapse during recent storms. Apparently, protecting my family's safety violated sacred community aesthetics. But 20 years of electrical troubleshooting had taught me something valuable. When systems fail, you don't just fix symptoms. You eliminate root causes. I filed formal complaints with the state attorney general about an illegally operating organization. Then I discovered consumer protection gold. Companies collecting fees without legal authority face triple damages plus attorney fees under most state consumer protection acts. Delilah wasn't just committing theft, she was constructing her own financial annihilation. My investigation revealed the criminal enterprise's full scope. 12 families systematically driven out over 18 months, forced to sell $23,000 below market value due to manufactured lien clouds on their titles. Delilah's real estate company represented buyers in 8 of those transactions. It was a protection racket with a realtor's license and a Mercedes. Desperation made Delilah escalate to city involvement, filing bogus complaints claiming our property poses significant neighborhood safety risks. When the actual code inspector arrived, I genuinely felt sorry for the guy. 2 hours hunting for non-existent violations, finally documenting our property as exceptionally well maintained with electrical installations exceeding all code requirements. Final tally, 0 violations found. Flawless professional vindication. But Delilah's desperation was just getting started. She actually contacted my employer, spinning fabricated tales about misusing company equipment and creating workplace liability issues. The woman's fear sweat was starting to overpower that expensive perfume. HR summoned me for emergency damage control. My supervisor remained supportive but issued fair warning. Keep personal disputes completely separate from workplace. Reasonable enough, but Delilah attempting to destroy my livelihood over deckboard repairs really crystallized the stakes we were playing for. That pivotal moment shifted Cassandra's entire perspective. "She's not just drunk on power," my wife observed. analyzing footage of Delilah's latest midnight property inspection. She's operating organized fraud using HOA authority as legal cover. Our strategy evolved from defensive to offensive. Instead of merely protecting ourselves, we document the entire criminal network. If Delilah wanted professional-grade warfare, she'd discover what real documentation looked like. The anonymous threat that appeared in our mailbox sealed our commitment. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. Block letters on dollar store notebook paper, roughly as sophisticated as a middle school bully's ransom demand. I actually laughed out loud. After 2 decades working with enough electricity to stop human hearts, some suburban crime boss making vague threats felt almost endearing. But Cassandra's law enforcement brain processed the situation differently. Anonymous threats indicate you're approaching something they genuinely fear, she explained, carefully bagging the note like criminal evidence. In my experience, when criminals start threatening witnesses, they're usually planning something desperate. Community victim interviews painted a devastating pattern. Elderly veteran Frank Kowalski lost $18,000 in forced sales after manufactured violations. Single mother Jennifer Valdez was drowning under $1,200 in fabricated fines. The Chen family had fled rather than fight, accepting crushing financial losses. Every story followed identical blueprints: escalating harassment, impossible penalties, legal threats, then miraculous buyers offering below-market prices through Delilah's company. The texture of victim statements under my hands felt weighty because I was handling evidence in what was clearly a criminal case. That evening, surveillance captured something that made my electrician instincts fire warning signals. Delilah's Mercedes appeared, accompanied by a black sedan parking across from our house like budget surveillance operations. Cassandra studied the footage with 23 years of professional experience. Multiple vehicles means serious escalation, she said quietly. They're planning either major intimidation or evidence gathering for whatever comes next. The game was evolving, and apparently we were winning enough to trigger desperate countermeasures, which, in electrical work, is when everything becomes most dangerous. The gloves came off with all the subtlety of a freight train collision. 3 a.m. phone calls launched the psychological warfare, heavy breathing, menacing silence, then click. By the 4th night, I answered cheerfully, "Delilah, your breathing technique really needs professional coaching." The calls stopped, but escalated to property destruction within days. Dog waste appeared on our porch with Swiss watch precision. My work truck's tires got professionally slashed in the power plant parking lot, all 4, clean utility knife cuts that probably took actual skill. The acrid smell of destroyed rubber mixing with motor oil created a sensory memory I'll never shake. Local police took my report with the boundless enthusiasm of DMV employees processing license renewals. Probably neighborhood kids, Officer Johnson suggested, despite targeting evidence that would convince a blind detective. Because random vandalism always focuses exclusively on electrical supervisors with HOA disputes. But here's where suburban harassment transformed into federal crime documentation. Mini twist alert. Instead of playing endless defense, I launched a full-scale investigation. Freedom of Information requests revealed Clayton Thornwick's spectacular corruption. 3 years of city council votes on zoning changes affecting 17 properties where Delilah later represented buyers. Every vote boosted buyer values while crushing seller values through fabricated community character restrictions. Public officials must recuse themselves from votes affecting family financial interests. Failure to do so constitutes criminal conflict of interest. Clayton had transformed city council into his wife's personal money printing operation. My home office became a federal crime scene, digital files organized by criminal statute, paper trails documenting systematic government corruption, screenshots of Delilah's social media posts bragging about maintaining community standards while her bank account swelled with fraud proceeds. Delilah's desperation reached nuclear levels with a restraining order filing claiming I systematically stalked and harassed HOA officials. Her legal brief read like creative writing from someone who'd never encountered actual attorneys. Court day delivered pure comedic gold. Judge Patricia Morrison reviewed Delilah's evidence-doctored photographs, obviously coached witness statements, and breathtakingly creative interpretations of security footage showing me walking to my own mailbox. Judge Morrison's response was poetry in motion. This appears to constitute frivolous legal harassment rather than legitimate safety concerns. Mrs. Thornwick deliberately misusing court systems carries severe consequences. Restraining order dismissed with prejudice. Delilah officially sanctioned for legal abuse. My faith in justice temporarily restored. Her subsequent meltdown was absolutely spectacular to witness. Emergency community safety meeting, spreading vicious rumors about my dangerous obsession with revenge. Professional flyers claiming I threatened innocent neighbors and criminally misused utility company resources. Dollar store paper quality, but premium-grade desperation content. Professional targeting escalated when she demanded state review of my electrical contractor license for alleged unpermitted work violations. The resulting investigation was comprehensive, invasive, and ultimately triumphant. State electrical inspector spent 6 grueling hours examining every wire, junction box, and installation throughout our house. His final report declared my work exemplary and significantly exceeding all code requirements. He actually commended my exceptional professional expertise in official state documentation. Delilah's credibility was evaporating faster than her manufactured authority. That pivotal moment activated Cassandra's dormant cop instincts. 23 years taught me to recognize organized criminal operations, she declared, studying our evidence mountain. This woman isn't running community governance, she's operating systematic extortion. Her law enforcement network provided the breakthrough that changed everything. Former colleague Detective Maria Santos revealed Delilah's harassment methods perfectly matched organized fraud schemes under active federal investigation across 3 neighboring counties. This wasn't isolated suburban criminality. This was coordinated criminal enterprise using HOA authority as legal cover for multi-jurisdictional real estate theft. Santos connected us directly with FBI agent Martinez, who explained our meticulous documentation provided crucial evidence for federal prosecution. Every photograph, audio recording, and timeline I'd obsessively created represented vital pieces of a massive organized crime puzzle. The texture of actual federal evidence bags felt profoundly different under my fingers, like they carried the genuine weight of justice instead of suburban bureaucratic theater. Agent Martinez outlined the staggering scope. 47 families systematically victimized across 3 counties, losing an average $31,000 each to Thornwick network fraud. Total documented theft exceeded $1.4 million, easily triggering federal wire fraud and conspiracy charges. But here's what fundamentally changed our situation. Agent Martinez required our continued cooperation, documenting ongoing criminal activity. We'd evolved from harassment victims into federal witnesses in an organized crime investigation. Federal witness protection protocols are now officially active, Martinez explained with professional gravity. Any additional threats against you constitute federal crimes with devastating consequences. That evening, surveillance outside our house escalated dramatically. Not just Delilah's familiar Mercedes, but 3 additional vehicles conducting amateur surveillance operations. The collective sound of multiple engines idling created an ominous mechanical symphony accompanying our dinner routine. Cassandra analyzed the scene through our blinds with 2 decades of tactical experience. They recognize something fundamental has shifted, she observed quietly. Federal investigations make criminals desperate, and desperate criminals make catastrophically poor decisions. The war had officially escalated beyond neighborhood disputes into federal crime territory, and we were no longer fighting alone. Everything shattered with one phone call. Martinez, this is retired Chief Cassandra Kellerman from Millfield Township, my wife said, using that commanding voice that still made seasoned criminals nervous. We need to discuss some very disturbing patterns. What Agent Martinez revealed next made my electrician hands actually shake. Mrs. Kellerman, we've been investigating the Thornwicks for 8 months as part of a federal organized crime operation. Your husband's documentation provides exactly the evidence we need to complete our prosecution. The room suddenly felt like it was shrinking. Federal investigation, 8 months, organized crime. Martinez's words hit like high-voltage shocks. 47 families systematically victimized across 3 counties. Total documented theft exceeding $1.4 million. Wire fraud, conspiracy, RICO violations for continuing criminal enterprise. This isn't neighborhood harassment, it's coordinated criminal organization. My brain struggled processing the magnitude. Every petty violation, every fabricated fine, every midnight intimidation, All calculated moves in a multi-state criminal operation using HOA authority as legal cover for systematic real estate theft. Here's the beautiful irony, Martinez continued, and I could hear him smiling through the phone. Mrs. Thornwick's escalating harassment campaign against you has been conducted under active federal surveillance for 6 weeks. Every threat, every illegal action, every conspiracy conversation has been documented by federal agents. Cassandra gripped my hand with 23 years of law enforcement strength. Even she looked stunned by the scope. But the revelation that completely rewired my understanding, Delilah wasn't some power-drunk HOA tyrant. She was middle management in a sophisticated criminal network operating across multiple states, systematically targeting suburban communities with weak municipal oversight and corruptible local officials. Your development was specifically selected, Martinez explained with clinical precision, because of documented municipal vulnerabilities and Clayton Thornwick's strategic government access points. Federal charges read like a criminal's worst nightmare: wire fraud, conspiracy, civil rights violations, money laundering, abuse of official position, continuing criminal enterprise. Clayton faced additional corruption charges and election fraud violations. Federal wire fraud charges carry 20-year mandatory sentences. Using mail or internet for fraud schemes triggers federal jurisdiction regardless of dollar amounts. The timeline crystallized our new reality. Federal indictments planned within 6 weeks, requiring our continued cooperation wearing sophisticated recording devices to document ongoing criminal conspiracy. You've officially transitioned from victims to federal cooperating witnesses, Martinez announced. Full protection protocols are now active. Protection was comprehensive and immediate. Direct federal emergency hotline, automatic response teams for any threats, immunity agreements, financial compensation for cooperation, potential witness relocation assistance. That afternoon, our house transformed into a federal surveillance center. The distinctive electronic smell of new monitoring equipment mixed with industrial adhesive from concealed recording devices. Cameras disguised as ordinary household items, audio systems with direct federal transmission capabilities, monitoring technology that would make Hollywood jealous. Federal paperwork felt different under my fingers, heavier somehow, weighted with actual governmental authority rather than suburban bureaucracy. Case files spread across our kitchen table revealed the true criminal scope: organizational charts mapping criminal hierarchy, financial flow diagrams showing money laundering operations, surveillance photos from other targeted communities. Every single violation manufactured against you represented a calculated business decision, Martinez explained, displaying evidence folders. Systematic property value manipulation coordinated with government corruption and sophisticated money laundering infrastructure. Cassandra studied crime scene photographs from other counties with professional intensity. I've investigated organized crime operations, she said quietly, her cop brain analyzing patterns. This level of coordination requires serious criminal infrastructure and significant financial backing. For the first time in months, I felt something beyond anger and frustration. I felt genuine hope, not just for our family, but for 47 other families who'd been systematically robbed by criminals masquerading as suburban officials. That evening, as federal monitoring equipment hummed almost inaudibly within our walls, Delilah's Mercedes never materialized on our street. The silence felt pregnant with dangerous potential. Federal investigations force criminals into binary choices: surrender immediately or escalate to catastrophic desperation. We were about to discover which path they'd choose. Federal cooperation transformed our house into something from a spy movie. Agent Martinez arrived with a tech team that made our modest ranch feel like mission control. The smell of new electronics and industrial adhesive filled rooms as they installed equipment that belonged in Hollywood thrillers: cameras disguised as smoke detectors, audio devices hidden in light switches, transmission gear broadcasting directly to federal monitoring stations. "Welcome to your new reality," Martinez said, testing crystal-clear audio that could capture whispered conversations. "You're now a federal evidence collection center." Cassandra's cop instincts kicked into overdrive. "Chain of custody procedures?" she asked the tech team with professional authority. "Evidence protocols?" "I've worked federal cases, walk me through everything." The legal education was like electrical engineering school, but for crime fighting. Federal prosecutor Amanda Chen explained wire fraud elements using our situation as a textbook example. Shell company property transfers within 90 days often indicate money laundering, especially when accompanied by government official voting patterns. Every move Delilah made screamed federal crime. Community organizing became covert intelligence work. We secretly contacted harassment victims, building a resistance network while maintaining operational security. Frank Kowalski agreed to federal interviews about his $18,000 theft. Jennifer Valdez documented every fabricated fine with timestamps that would make forensic accountants weep with joy. Agent Martinez taught me financial investigation techniques that felt familiar, following money flows like tracing electrical circuits. "Your electrician brain that diagnoses power problems," he said, spreading flow charts across our kitchen table. "Same skills, different voltage." The patterns were beautiful in their criminality. Multiple property transfers between shell companies within 90-day windows. Below-market forced sales followed immediately by strategic flips. Campaign contributions timing perfectly with favorable zoning votes that benefited Delilah's buyers. Evidence preservation felt like handling live wires. One mistake destroys everything. Federal documentation standards made my workplace safety protocols look casual. Chain of custody requirements, contamination prevention, timestamp accuracy that could withstand Supreme Court scrutiny. Psychological preparation became crucial. Cassandra coached me on staying calm while wearing recording devices during confrontations. 23 years taught me that cornered criminals make desperate choices, she explained. Federal pressure makes them either surrender or become extremely dangerous. Our strategy shifted to controlled provocation, legally exercising property rights to trigger more obvious criminal behavior. We planned approved landscaping that would prompt fabricated violations, scheduled legitimate home improvements exceeding Delilah's tolerance, organized a neighborhood barbecue to document community support and identify residents too terrified to speak publicly. The ally network expanded beyond our subdivision. Union colleagues provided character witness statements. Plant supervisors documented my professional integrity. Police Chief Williams offered jurisdiction support if threats crossed city boundaries. Technical research consumed my evenings like obsessive hobby projects. Civil rights violations become federal crimes when they show pattern and practice document everything with dates and demographics. Delilah's targeting of elderly veterans, single mothers, and new residents created perfect federal case precedents. Martinez outlined prosecution timeline with surgical precision. 6 weeks of documented criminal activity before arrests. Every illegal act strengthens our case. Every threat adds federal charges. Every conspiracy conversation provides RICO evidence. Safety protocols felt reassuring rather than restrictive. Direct emergency hotlines to federal response teams. Safe house arrangements if intimidation escalated. Witness protection if retaliation threatened our lives. But here's what really motivated me. This extended far beyond our personal fight. Federal immunity for cooperating residents, financial restitution for fraud victims, criminal prosecution preventing future community victimization. The coordination was intricate and impressive. Local journalist Sarah Mitchell received background briefings for post-arrest coverage. Federal media relations prepared community statements. Victim advocates arranged counseling for affected families. Underground meetings felt like resistance cells organizing against criminal occupation. Frank shared decades of community knowledge. Jennifer revealed systematic targeting patterns. Other residents documented intimidation designed to silence opposition voices. Federal evidence requirements were specific and comprehensive. Recorded conspiracy conversations, documented money laundering transactions, proof of government corruption coordination, systematic civil rights violation evidence. Your role is crucial but increasingly dangerous, Martinez warned during final briefing. Organized criminals become most violent when federal investigations threaten their freedom. Document everything, trust our surveillance. Remember, you're not alone anymore. Equipment testing revealed sophisticated federal capabilities. Audio so sensitive it captured whispers across rooms. Video quality identifying faces in darkness. Real-time transmission to federal monitoring centers providing immediate backup. The texture of federal protocols under my hands felt like holding actual justice documents that would destroy criminal organizations, recordings sending criminals to federal prison, evidence protecting future communities from similar predation. That evening, hidden federal equipment hummed quietly throughout our house, and I felt something absent for months, genuine confidence. Not just in our personal vindication, but in systematic justice for dozens of families who'd suffered in terrorized silence. The trap was set with federal precision. Surveillance was active and comprehensive. Criminal documentation was officially underway. Time to discover exactly how desperate Delilah would become when federal walls started closing in around her criminal empire. Because desperate criminals with everything to lose make the most catastrophic mistakes. Delilah's desperation manifested in ways that would have been comical if they weren't federal crimes. The sabotage started subtle, then escalated to property destruction that federal agents called textbook evidence of criminal conspiracy. Our sprinkler system mysteriously malfunctioned, flooding my electrical workshop in the basement. The smell of water mixing with sawdust and metal shavings created an acrid mess that took days to clean up. Fresh paint got thrown across our newly stained deckboards like abstract art created by vandals. The chemical smell of latex paint mixed with wood stain created a sensory assault that perfectly matched the visual destruction. But here's where Delilah made her first major federal mistake. Instead of anonymous harassment, Clayton Thornwick approached me directly at the gas station with a bribery attempt that federal recording equipment captured in crystal-clear audio. "Look, Bryce," Clayton said, sliding up to my truck pump with the casual confidence of someone who'd never faced federal prosecution. "Let's be reasonable men here. $5,000 cash plus guarantee of no future HOA violations. Clean slate, fresh start." He actually pulled out an envelope thick with bills. "City's got some electrical contracting opportunities coming up. Friends of the community get first consideration, if you understand my meaning." Federal surveillance captured every word, every gesture, every attempt at government corruption. Agent Martinez later called it the most beautiful bribery documentation we've recorded this year. The psychological pressure campaign intensified beyond suburban harassment into genuine intimidation. Delilah confronted Cassandra at the grocery store, cornering her between frozen foods and dairy products like some suburban mobster. "Serious consequences are coming if you don't stop disrupting community harmony," Delilah hissed, close enough that Cassandra could smell her desperation masquerading as expensive perfume. Some problems disappear permanently when they become too troublesome. Federal recording devices hidden in Cassandra's purse captured the entire threat, adding witness intimidation to Delilah's growing list of federal charges. Professional targeting escalated to workplace sabotage. Anonymous calls flooded the power plant claiming I stole copper wire and falsified safety reports. Plant security investigated thoroughly, finding the accusations completely fabricated, but forcing defensive responses that wasted everyone's time. Security Director Reynolds, former military police with zero tolerance for games, recognized harassment campaigns immediately. 20 years military taught me to spot organized intimidation, he told my supervisor. Someone's running psychological warfare against your employee. Community intimidation reached propaganda levels. Delilah organized concerned neighbors meetings spreading manufactured rumors about our family, claims that I had dangerous anger management issues and threatened innocent children, suggestions that Cassandra abused police connections to avoid criminal consequences. Federal surveillance captured Delilah coordinating lies with core supporters, coaching neighbors on false testimony, manufacturing witness statements that would crumble under cross-examination. The frivolous litigation was almost impressive in its audacity. The Thornwicks filed defamation and harassment lawsuits claiming we'd damaged their reputations and business interests. Federal court removed the cases immediately, citing ongoing criminal investigation, but not before sanctioning their lawyers for filing bad faith litigation. Financial pressure reached nuclear levels when the HOA board, completely controlled by Delilah, voted to place liens on our property for accumulated violations totaling $2,847. Every single violation had been manufactured after federal investigation began, creating perfect evidence of retaliatory enforcement. But here's what made their desperation beautiful from a federal prosecution standpoint. Every escalating crime was documented with surveillance quality that would make courtroom juries gasp. Community fractures became visible as neighborhood residents chose sides. Delilah supporters grew increasingly isolated as federal investigation rumors spread. Anonymous support notes appeared in our mailbox from neighbors too frightened to speak publicly. Several residents privately apologized for months of silence, admitting they'd been terrorized into compliance. Counterintelligence operations revealed the true scope of Delilah's network. Federal surveillance captured coordination meetings with supporters across 3 counties, discussing problem residents and enforcement strategies that clearly violated civil rights. Bryce maintained professional demeanor despite extreme provocation, following federal cooperation protocols while documenting every illegal act. Agent Martinez praised the quality of evidence gathering, noting that each criminal action strengthened federal prosecution substantially. Cassandra's law enforcement network provided crucial intelligence about similar fraud patterns in adjacent counties. Federal case files now included RICO charges for continuing criminal enterprise spanning multiple states with dozens of victims. The psychological toll was significant sleep deprivation from constant surveillance and harassment, stress from maintaining federal cooperation while protecting family safety, exhaustion from working full shifts while gathering criminal evidence. But federal protection provided crucial support: direct hotlines to response teams, immunity agreements preventing prosecution for cooperation, financial compensation for time and risk, potential relocation assistance if threats escalated beyond acceptable levels. That night, federal monitoring equipment captured something that made Agent Martinez call emergency briefing. Delilah had scheduled an emergency community meeting to vote on permanently removing dangerous residents who threaten neighborhood safety. The meeting notice read like a lynch mob invitation disguised as civic engagement. Federal agents recognized escalation patterns that typically preceded violent retaliation. Organized criminals become most dangerous when they realize prosecution is inevitable, Martinez warned. Public meetings provide cover for coordinated intimidation, or worse. The final battle was approaching, and Delilah was planning to make it very public. Delilah's final gambit was scheduled for maximum psychological impact and community intimidation. The emergency community safety meeting invitation arrived with all the subtlety of a declaration of war: gold-embossed letterhead, formal language, and an agenda that read like charges in a criminal trial, addressing clear and present dangers to community safety and property values. Delilah had orchestrated this showdown for the community center, scheduling it during prime time when maximum residents could attend her character assassination theater. Here's the mini-twist that sealed her federal fate. Federal surveillance captured her planning session with supporters, revealing the full scope of fabricated evidence and coordinated false testimony she intended to present. "Make sure you emphasize the electrical safety concerns," Delilah coached Rick during a recorded conversation in her kitchen. "Fire hazards, explosion risks, whatever sounds most terrifying. The elderly residents will vote to remove them immediately if they think their lives are at risk." The manufactured evidence was impressively elaborate. Doctored photographs claiming property damage to neighboring houses. False witness statements from coached supporters describing threatening encounters that never happened. Completely fabricated police reports alleging dangerous behavior that would have resulted in arrests if actually filed. Federal agents called the evidence fabrication amateur hour criminality with professional consequences. Property damage escalated to felony levels as desperation overtook caution. Our mailbox got destroyed with what looked like baseball bat precision metal twisted and painted surfaces scraped down to bare steel. The metallic screech of destruction woke neighbors who pretended not to notice. Car vandalism followed predictable patterns. All 4 tires slashed with utility knife precision, creating rubber carnage that required expensive replacement. The chemical smell of tire rubber mixed with motor oil created a scent memory I'll associate with criminal desperation forever. Garage door graffiti provided the personal touch: "Move or else," spray painted in letters large enough to read from across the street. The paint fumes lingered for days, creating olfactory evidence of escalating threats. Federal recording equipment captured the planning and execution of property destruction, providing perfect audio and video evidence of ongoing criminal conspiracy. Community manipulation reached propaganda levels as Delilah exploited elderly residents' legitimate safety concerns. She spread fabricated rumors about my electrical work causing fire hazards, despite state inspection documentation proving exceptional safety standards. Claims that Cassandra covered up family criminal behavior using former police connections showed how desperate their narrative had become. Any background check would reveal Cassandra's impeccable law enforcement record and community service. Legal harassment reached absurd levels when Delilah filed emergency restraining order motions claiming immediate physical threats from our family. Federal agents intercepted the filing and coordinated with Judge Morrison, who recognized the pattern of frivolous legal abuse. "This represents systematic misuse of court resources," Judge Morrison noted in official sanctions. "Repeated frivolous filings constitute harassment of both defendants and judicial system." Intimidation of potential witnesses escalated as the Thornwicks threatened other residents considering federal cooperation. Promises of HOA violations for anyone attending federal interviews. Economic retaliation threats through Clayton's City Council position. Social ostracism for residents who sided with troublemakers. Professional sabotage attempts reached governmental levels when Clayton used City Council influence to threaten power plant permit renewals. Implications that my employment could be affected by community safety complaints represented clear abuse of official position. Federal agents documented every abuse of governmental authority, adding corruption charges that would end Clayton's political career permanently. But here's what made their desperation absolutely beautiful. From a prosecution standpoint, federal surveillance captured the entire conspiracy, including detailed planning conversations, financial coordination discussions, and explicit threats against witnesses. Wire fraud, conspiracy, civil rights violations, witness intimidation, abuse of official position, money laundering through fabricated fines, every conversation added federal charges with devastating sentencing consequences. Federal case completion reached critical mass as Agent Martinez confirmed sufficient evidence for comprehensive indictments. RICO charges for continuing criminal enterprise, multiple defendants across 3 counties, financial forfeitures exceeding $2 million in criminal proceeds. Timing coordination became crucial as federal arrests were scheduled for the day of Delilah's community meeting. Maximum public impact, immediate community protection, and complete exposure of the fraud network's scope. Community protection protocols included witness safety during arrests, immunity agreements for cooperative testimony, and federal monitoring preventing retaliation against residents who provided evidence. The emotional toll of months-long federal cooperation was significant. Constant surveillance stress, harassment documentation requirements, maintaining normal life while gathering criminal evidence. Federal agents commended our dedication to community justice despite personal costs. Strategic preparation reached final phases as evidence compilation and witness coordination prepared for federal prosecution. 47 documented violations manufactured illegally, over $200,000 in fabricated fines across multiple families. Perfect documentation of systematic fraud operations. That night, as federal monitoring equipment hummed quietly in our walls, multiple vehicles appeared outside our house for what looked like final surveillance before Delilah's public confrontation. But unbeknownst to the criminal network conducting amateur counter-surveillance, federal agents were conducting professional surveillance of their surveillance. The trap was completely set. Federal evidence was comprehensive and devastating. Community meeting would become arrest venue. Time to discover whether Delilah's criminal arrogance could survive federal handcuffs. The Pinewood Estates Community Center had never hosted a federal takedown before. 73 residents packed folding chairs while Delilah orchestrated her final performance from a makeshift podium adorned with printed charts and enlarged photographs. The smell of nervous perspiration mixed with industrial carpet cleaner created an atmosphere thick with tension and anticipation. "Thank you all for prioritizing community safety," Delilah began, her voice carrying that familiar tone of manufactured authority. "Tonight we address the clear and present danger that threatens our neighborhood's peace and property values." Her presentation was Academy Award-worthy fiction. Elaborate slideshow featuring doctored photographs showing supposed property damage, emotional appeals about protecting our children and seniors from unstable individuals, fabricated witness statements describing encounters that existed only in her imagination. "The Kellerman family has systematically terrorized this community," she declared with theatrical gravitas. "Their pattern of threats, property violations, and aggressive behavior demands immediate action." When she called for a vote to permanently ban the Kellerman family from community participation, I stood to address the crowd despite the hostile atmosphere. "Before you vote," I said calmly, pulling out my own documentation, "maybe you should know what's really been happening here." I systematically refuted each fabricated claim with time-stamped evidence, professional inspection reports, and documented proof of manufactured violations. Maintained professional composure despite obvious setup, letting facts speak louder than emotion. "Every violation Mrs. Thornwick claims we committed has been investigated by qualified professionals and found completely baseless," I explained. "Every fine has been proven fraudulent. Every threat has been fabricated. Then came the moment that changed everything. Cassandra stepped forward, and the room went dead silent. Before this vote proceeds, I think everyone should understand exactly who they're dealing with. She identified herself with calm authority. I'm retired Police Chief Cassandra Kellerman, 23 years in law enforcement. I've spent my career investigating fraud, and I recognize organized criminal activity when I see it. The community reaction was electric, stunned silence as residents processed the revelation. Several neighbors expressed shock at Cassandra's background. Delilah attempted dismissing her credentials as irrelevant intimidation tactics. That's when Agent Martinez and his federal team entered the community center, FBI badges visible, professional demeanor commanding immediate attention. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting needs to pause for official federal business. The arrest warrants were served with precise federal protocol. Delilah Thornwick, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, civil rights violations, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Clayton Thornwick, you're under arrest for abuse of official position, money laundering, conspiracy, and corruption of public office. Rick Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy, filing false reports, and participating in organized fraud. Handcuffs clicked with metallic finality as Miranda rights were read aloud. Delilah's protests about political persecution and federal overreach fell on deaf ears trained to hear criminal excuses. Agent Martinez addressed the stunned community with federal authority. This organization has operated illegally for over 18 months. Fabricated violations have cost your community over $200,000 in fraudulent fines. Multiple families were forced to sell homes below market value through systematic extortion. The evidence revelation was comprehensive and devastating. Federal agents displayed investigation highlights, recordings of conspiracy conversations, financial records documenting money laundering operations, organizational charts revealing multi-county criminal enterprise scope. Community vindication was immediate and emotional. Elderly veteran Frank Kowalski tearfully thanked federal agents for validating his experience. Multiple families expressed relief that their harassment hadn't been imagined or deserved. My mic drop moment came naturally. We could have just paid the fines and moved away like they wanted. But sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, especially when they're stealing from your entire community. Cassandra added her law enforcement perspective with professional authority. 23 years taught me that criminals count on good people staying silent. Thank you for not letting that happen here. Local investigative journalist Sarah Mitchell captured the entire scene. Federal arrests at community meeting, resident reactions, victim testimonials. Perfect documentation of suburban justice being served with federal precision. Community resolution was immediate and democratic. Motions to dissolve the current HOA board passed unanimously. Temporary leadership from uninvolved residents. Plans for legitimate HOA structure with proper legal oversight and transparent financial reporting. Federal asset seizure began immediately as Thornwick properties were identified for criminal forfeiture. Fraudulent gains would be returned to victim families. Community restitution fund established from recovered assets. The smell of federal paperwork, that distinctive government document scent, filled the community center as agents processed evidence and witness statements. Media presence documented everything for public record. Federal arrests becoming lead story on local news. Community protection through exposure of criminal enterprise scope. Educational value for other neighborhoods facing similar fraud. As handcuffed criminals were led to federal vehicles, the community center atmosphere shifted from tension to relief. Residents who'd been terrorized into silence finally felt safe, expressing support for justice. The federal investigation had transformed personal harassment into community liberation. Suburban criminals had discovered that federal justice reaches everywhere, even into community centers hosting fake emergency meetings designed to eliminate witnesses. Federal justice moved with impressive efficiency once the handcuffs came off. Within 8 weeks, plea agreements eliminated any chance of lengthy trials. Delilah Thornwick received 4 years federal prison plus $180,000 restitution. Clayton got 6 years federal prison and permanent forfeiture of city council position. Rick Morrison earned 18 months federal prison plus 500 hours community service. The sound of gavels finalizing their sentences was music to 47 families' ears. Pinewood Estates residents formed a legitimate HOA with proper legal structure and democratic oversight. Democratic elections replaced appointed cronies. Professional property management company provided transparent financial reporting. Independent legal counsel ensured compliance with state and corporation requirements. Federal asset forfeiture returned $127,000 to affected families within 6 months. Frank Kowalski recovered his full $18,000 loss plus interest, enough to help with his granddaughter's college tuition. 12 families received compensation for forced below-market sales. Community Legal Defense Fund was established to prevent future predatory targeting. The smell of fresh paint and new construction filled our neighborhood as residents finally felt safe improving their properties without manufactured harassment. Bryce and Cassandra's vindication was complete and public. All fabricated violations were officially dismissed with prejudice. Power plant management commended my integrity under pressure with formal recognition. FBI presented Civilian Cooperation Awards for exceptional federal assistance. Professional recognition transformed our nightmare into neighborhood showcase. My electrical work became the standard for proper renovation techniques. Contractors Association recognized excellence in residential electrical systems. Neighbors requested consultations for their own projects, creating positive community relationships. But the real victory was community-wide protection and improvement. Restitution funds supported the Pinewood Estates Safety and Beautification Project, professional electrical upgrades for elderly residents' homes, community workshop series on home maintenance and legal rights, annual scholarships for local students pursuing skilled trades. Educational impact extended far beyond our neighborhood. Federal case became training material for law enforcement agencies across multiple states. HOA fraud recognition techniques, community-based investigation strategies, civilian cooperation best practices. Broader consequences rippled through state government. Investigation expanded to neighboring counties, identifying 23 additional fraud cases. State legislation was proposed requiring HOA oversight and mandatory licensing. Real estate industry compliance training incorporated federal fraud prevention protocols. Personal growth strengthened our marriage through shared adversity. Home renovation projects were completed with enthusiastic community volunteer help. Garden and landscape were restored with native plants and neighborhood involvement. Annual barbecue became beloved tradition celebrating community resilience. Legacy establishment created lasting protection through the Kellerman Community Defense Fund legal consultation resources for residents facing HOA abuse, documentation guidance and investigation training, referral network connecting victims with federal authorities. Media recognition validated our sacrifice for community justice. Local news feature on federal fraud case won State Journalism Award. Documentary film option was purchased for national cable network. We became advocates for HOA reform legislation protecting vulnerable communities. 3 key takeaways emerged for anyone facing similar situations. Always verify organization's legal authority before paying any fines. Expired incorporation means zero collection authority. Document. Everything with timestamps and photos patterns of abuse become federal evidence with devastating criminal consequences. Individual courage can protect entire communities from organized fraud. One family's resistance can save dozens of others. The annual Justice Day Festival became Pinewood Estates' signature celebration. Scholarship presentations to local students pursuing skilled trades, community appreciation awards recognizing civic courage, educational workshops on legal rights and fraud prevention techniques. Children played in the community park funded by criminal restitution money, their laughter echoing where once only tension and fear existed. Bryce's consulting on similar cases in other communities revealed the widespread nature of suburban fraud. This problem is more common than anyone realizes, he told federal training seminars. Criminals target communities that feel powerless, but federal law provides powerful protection. Agent Martinez included our cooperation in federal fraud recognition training, teaching other agents how civilian documentation can build bulletproof criminal cases. Share your HOA nightmare in the comments. You might be surprised how many stories involve actual criminal activity rather than just petty harassment. Federal authorities need pattern documentation to identify organized fraud networks. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people taking on corrupt systems and winning through courage, documentation, and community cooperation. Remember, bullies with clipboards are often criminals with badges. Federal law provides powerful protection for communities willing to fight back. The sound of children's laughter replaced the Mercedes engine purring. Justice had finally come to Pinewood Estates.